All right, my friends. So, China's military space program. Let's do an investigation smackdown. You will not want to miss this because I'm going to be unveiling some brand new information about the Chinese military space program right from the horse's mouth, and I unveil a very shocking conclusion in this kind of ongoing saga of this quest to explore. My name's Joe. Welcome to Beyond Theory. If you're interested in exploring facts beyond the explained, please do hit that subscribe button, share this video, and come join me. Well, why is everybody interested in space all of a sudden? Have you asked that question? I mean, we've heard Donald Trump come out and say the Space Force, right? And we also have kind of heard this news about China, the Chang'e 4 lunar lander mission, where basically these Chinese fellers, they shot up there on the far side of the moon. Some people call it the dark side of the moon. And they put a lander up there and they actually grew some plants while they germinated some seeds on the moon. Now, why did they do that? Because China has a military space purpose in addition to what we're hearing about their civilian space purposes. And China made headway as being the third nation on planet Earth to actually land on the moon. And they do, in fact, have a human space flight program and several launch sites in China to support that, along with the Russians. Well, to unpack all of this, I decided to take it upon myself to file a Freedom of Information Act request. Now, if you don't know what that is, here in these United States, we have the ability to essentially ask the government whatever in the heck we want, and they kind of have to tell us one way or the other what they in fact have, because it's supposed to be taxpayer funded. Now, do I believe that? No. Quite frankly, I don't. However, it is a lot more information that we can gather when we're trying to unpack these space mysteries rather than listening to someone's verbal report, rather than just taking somebody at their word, at their story, right? Show me your evidence. Okay. Well, evidence kind of might be somebody's report and some nice drawings, right? But evidence might also be actual real publications from the United States government intelligence services. Now, I need to make a really important point here. Before I jump into this Freedom of Information Act request, and please do stay tuned because this is going to get pretty rowdy. I'm actually going to be playing a voicemail message that I got from a DIA analyst in this video, so please stay tuned. Just because something comes from the government does not mean that it's true, accurate, and correct. I mean, we can be reasonable, rational, logical people about this, can't we? Especially when it comes to space, where we've already covered some ground in this military Space Force series, factual, historical ground, at least according to their story, that the National Reconnaissance Office had in space in the 1960s, plans at least, to have a manned orbiting space station that was a spy satellite. Additionally, in the 1960s, the United States government had plans for a glider that was manned, a space glider that was called the Dinosaur, the X-20, I believe it was. And I've already done and received a Freedom of Information Act request on the Dinosaur Space Glider program from the U.S. government. So you might want to stay tuned in a future video. However, my point being, I am not stooging for the government. However, I am searching for whatever they've got. And that's their story. Now, you're going to say, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's disinformation. That's COINTELPRO. Okay, fine. Could be true. But guess what? They've got to stick to their story in the future. They have to stick and be consistent with their past, what they've published in the past. And I'm going to show you in this video, in this Freedom of Information Act request on the Chinese space military, why that is so important. Because I'm going to show you my evidence. So please join. Okay, here we go. On the screen right now, I am showing you a something that I posted on Twitter. Joe from Carolina, at Joe from Carolina on twitter.com. Please do feel free to join that Twitter page because we're all Twitter pated. And this is a return from the Defense Intelligence Agency. You can see the letterhead right there, Washington, D.C. It's dated April 9th, 2019. And here's what it says. This responds to your request, Mr. Joe from the Carolinas, or some might say doctor. Under the Freedom of Information Act, dated February 16, 2019. It takes an awful long time to get these things back. Therein, you requested information concerning all releasable information, including documents, videos, and pictures of all source intelligence on Chinese military capabilities within the space operating environment, both manned and unmanned. Now, that's a direct quote from my FOIA request, and the reason I used all those big words is because I actually found an interview of the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he used those exact same words. Donk, donk. Okay. Please don't copyright strike me on that, YouTube. I was just using some artistic creative expression. All right, so the Defense Intelligence Agency gets back to me earlier this month and says, DIA, I apologize for the delay in processing your request. DIA continues its efforts to eliminate the large backlog of pending FOIA requests. Well, that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that. I'm still waiting to hear from the DIA on the AATIP program, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. But, you know, who's counting? I mean, we've just got hundreds of requests, and that's why videos aren't coming out faster, because it takes them so long to get back to us. All right, here's what they said. Based on the information contained in your request, the Defense Intelligence Agency searched its systems of records for responsive documents. Despite a thorough search, no documents responsive to your request were found. And I thought to myself, when I opened this letter, you know, and I'm like, huh? Huh? Why? Well, you see, I was kind of playing possum a little bit on this FOIA request, and I do admit that, and I'm guilty as charged, but, you know, we've got the right to do that. And the reason why I can say this is because the DIA in January of 2019 published a document, publicly available, publicly requested document, that's called Challenges to Security in Space. Okay? And in this document, they very, very clearly state, quote, space-based capabilities provide integral support to military, commercial, and civilian applications. So why do you think that there's a big drive for space right now? Is that because there's a new space race, or is maybe there's like long-standing technological barriers and cost barriers to space that are falling? And it gives more countries, as well as companies worldwide, the ability to make their own satellites, launch stuff out into space, into orbit, explore space, and engage in human spaceflight. I think that that's a pretty reasonable, rational, logical conclusion. Have you seen the CubeSats that DARPA has been shooting up and other even commercial programs? You can fit 100 little teeny tiny satellites onto one rocket. They call them CubeSats. They're literally as big as a cube. Just a couple times larger than this water bottle. I'm going to cover that brand up until they sponsor me. Right, shucks. Okay, that's what I think's going on. Well, the DIA is telling us that Chinese military doctrine indicate that they view space as important to modern warfare. Now, stay tuned to this channel because I have a series coming out on space warfare that will knock your socks off. The DIA also tells us in this public document that was created in January 2019 that the Chinese view counter space capabilities as a way to reduce U.S. and allied military effectiveness. Now, if that doesn't spell secret space program for you folks, I don't know what does. China recognized their militaries in 2015, emphasizing the importance of space operations. Do you think that this Space Force thing is something new? China's developed robust and capable space services, including space-based intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance spying. Wonder what's going on in them cell phones that the Chinese made for us, huh? Moreover, the Chinese are making improvements to existing systems, including their space launch vehicles and satellite navigation constellations. Oh, it's not just one satellite anymore. The space operations of the militaries on planet Earth are talking about developing and shooting up networks of satellites to resemble the brain cell structure, the neuron structure. So what that means in English is they're basically developing and shooting up a number of little satellites that all connect together with communications so that if one of those little satellites gets taken out, they can still communicate with each other. And what does this mean for the average person? Well, just this past week, what the military has been telling us through the Space Foundation Symposium in Colorado is that they're kind of responsible for debit cards going through, ATM cards going through, cell phone calls going through, broadband going up into a satellite and then coming back. Well, if one of those satellites gets taken out by a purported enemy, well then, Buster, this live stream's down and we ain't going to be using our cell phones. We ain't going to be donating on patreon.com anymore. We can get Joe from Carolinas, by the way, on patreon.com if you want to support this. So it does have applications, at least that's what they're telling us, for the average person. One of these satellites gets taken out. So they're developing networks of satellites. Okay. The Defense Intelligence Agency, even though they don't have any documents responsive to my request for Chinese military space capabilities, they tell us in January, Chinese space surveillance networks are capable, currently, present tense, of searching, tracking, and characterizing satellites in all all Earth orbits. Now, what does that mean? What that means is your government, if you're in the United States, your government is telling you that the Chinese have the ability to map out, identify, search, and track every single satellite, whether it's in low Earth orbit, where the International Space Station supposedly is. I would say it is, but I know some of you are very skeptical about space. It also is mid-Earth orbit. Okay, so a little farther out, and then you've got geosync orbit. Geosync means satellites that are so far out there. Wait, out there. Right out there. Geosync basically means that a satellite is so far outside of Earth's orbit that if you're on the ground and you look at that satellite, it never moves 24 hours a day. It looks like a star. Okay. And I've seen documentation from the U.S. military, publicly available documents. I don't want access to classified information. I can't handle that responsibility. Shucks. I've seen publicly available documents and studies done by the Rand Corporation and everything else where they're talking about ideas of this space warfare where they want to send, they think they can hide themselves from these Chinese electronic jamming technologies, these satellite jamming technologies, space warfare. They think they can hide their classified satellites or whatever out in the radiation belts, the Van Allen radiation belts. If they're appropriately shielded from radiation, it's the best place to hide one of their priceless satellites, because they no particular waves can actually get through that radiation. Now, if you ask me, you're going to send humans in there. That's pretty suicidal or homicidal, as the case may be. But hey, I'm just reporting it to you. I ain't advocating it. Okay, the Defense Intelligence Agency also tells us that China is developing jamming as well as cyberspace capabilities, directed energy weapons. I am not kidding. On-orbit capabilities and ground-based anti-satellite missiles that can achieve a range of reversible to non-reversible effects. Now, let's keep in mind, years ago, China shot an anti-satellite missile up into the sky and blew out one of their own satellites, sending it into thousands of pieces that are still in low Earth orbit today. And those little teeny tiny fragments of a Chinese satellite are currently classified and tracked by United States Air Force Space Command. And those little buggers, those little grains, are also threats to the International Space Station. And I would tack onto that anything else they got up there that's classified. Okay. So anyway, we got this Freedom of Information Act request that I'm doing because I think something's going on, quite frankly. And I know that we're not being told a lot, as evidenced by the fact that classification schedules are 30 plus something years behind. And you got to beg them to get anything declassified, even if it is past the 30-year mark. You got to know what to ask for. And my commitment on this channel is that I am exploring and discovering the what to ask for and giving you some data-informed speculation as opposed to making things up for clickbait, because, you know, that really doesn't work too well nowadays on YouTube, at least. But anyhow. So what I would like to do is let you know that I did contest the response from the DIA that said, hey, we don't have anything. I just called them on it respectfully. And I called the number and I spoke with a very nice FOIA officer at the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I mentioned this on Twitter, so I'm just kind of conveying the story to you. You see, when somebody who's sane calls up the government, and I'm not saying I'm 100% sane, I'm just maybe like a little over half, you know. When somebody who's semi-sane calls the government and talks to them, the conversation kind of goes like this. Defense Intelligence Agency. Yeah, this is Joe from the Carolinas. I got a request, a FOIA request back, and my case number on the request is this, and I wanted to go ahead and contest that. Now, I didn't say, let's try that again. Defense Intelligence Agency. This is a parody. My name's Joe from the Carolinas, and I know y'all have a secret space program, and I know y'all have extraterrestrials, and I know for a fact that you've got warp technology and you're going through black holes and you're covering it up, and I know that NASA's in on it with you, and by the way, I also happen to know that you got food replicators. Now give me the data. I mean, really? So we got to be sensical about this, common sensical. These are average people that don't follow science fiction. They probably like science fiction. So anyway, to make a longer story short, the FOIA officer DIA said, well, I really would like to, would you be open to speaking with our DIA analyst who worked on this particular request? And I said, well, yes, it would. Sure. As long as I don't have to swear an oath, you know. And so they took my information, and yesterday I got a phone call from DIA. And here's the voicemail message that I promised you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dovetail after this voicemail message to how I changed the request. And I'll tell you how the conversation went. Let me see if I can pull this up without doxing someone, because that's not cool. You know what I mean? Give me a thumbs up if you think doxing sucks. Because I sure think it does. All right. Let me get to the right screen. Excuse me. I'm going to have to mute this because he gives his name. Give me just a second, folks, please. Bear with me, please. I'm an American after all. Okay, here we go.
I'm returning your phone inquiry regarding a Freedom of Information Act request that you submitted to the Defense Intelligence Agency. I understand that you have some questions about the response that you received. You can give me a call.
And we're not going to give his phone number out. So he just gave his phone number out and said to give him a call. Okay, so there's your evidence, right? So anyway, I did not record the phone call that I had with the gentleman, but I did actually talk to him, and he basically wanted to know, am I really appealing this? Like, am I really going to appeal this? And I said, yes, I am. And he says, well, what is the basis of your appeal? He actually told me how to go through the appeal and then called me back and said, what's the basis of your appeal? And so what I said to him was, the reason why I'm appealing this Freedom of Information Act request from the Chinese military capabilities within space is because on page 15 of the Defense Intelligence Agency publication, Challenges to Security in Space, see if we can flip to page 15. It says down here, the DIA, many of these space technologies can serve a civilian and military purpose, and China emphasizes civil-military integration, a phrase used in part to refer to the leveraging of dual-use technologies, policies, and organizations for military benefit. So I said, they wrote it. I didn't write it. I said, y'all say you don't have any responsive documents, but you just published one publicly. So now I want it all. I want the videos. I want the images. I want the actual studies. And I also added on to this appeal right here. There's my appeal. I gave him the link to their own document. He didn't know they had it. I'm serious. He said, yeah, that was on our website. Yeah. Okay. I also said on the appeal, because some of these people that do these searches are very, very focused. They're very exact. And so I said to them, as I'm requesting videos, photos, as well as documents, I would prefer electronic or CD/DVD delivery. Now, here's the critical phrase here. If you deny all or any part of this request, please cite each specific exemption you think justifies your refusal to release the information, and notify me of further appeal procedures available under the law. So what that means in English is, I'm aware that my rights as a taxpayer are that you got to tell me what you got, or you at least got to tell me you got something, but can't tell me what it is. You can't just give me this no responsive document stuff, which I respect. Maybe I got the wrong keywords, but nonetheless, now I've shown them the evidence and I'm asking for theirs. So if you like that sort of thing, I would ask you to please do subscribe to this channel. Click that thumbs up. Leave me a comment down in the comment section if you enjoy this kind of thing. And listen, if you enjoy exploring these facts beyond the explained, stay tuned. Because I got a lot more stuff. I have so much content that I honestly could go for years. Right now, it's just a matter of finding the time and finding the right way, the format that's easiest for you to watch and comprehend and listen to. Because I know many of you are listening to me right now in your cars, for crying out loud. I'm like, be careful, turn on those headlights, or, look in that rear view. One of these law enforcement people might be behind you like, oh, is they on WhatsApp talking about them next speed traps? By the way, did you know that there's a lot of communications technologies that are used by different law enforcement that operate on satellites too? Now, what might happen if there's a kinetic weapon test, another kinetic weapon test, or an electromagnetic pulse, which is talked about by the U.S. government in actual real documents, and it's all being developed by other foreign governments as well? What might happen to law enforcement? What might happen to the bridges, the drawbridges around this beautiful country that are all computerized? What about GPS, right? GPS gets wiped out. It's not just going to be Google Maps. It's going to be tractors. They got these big tractors that farm large tracts of land, and they run off of GPS. That's how they automatically, they're robots. They got robots in space too. And I'm on a couple different research lines right now about manned space programs, but also the robotic or autonomous space programs. Let me tell you, that stuff is hot to trot right now, the robotic stuff. And if they're in geosync orbit, you're not going to see them flying around. They're going to look like stars. But what I'm doing is I am going to be unpacking the projects. I'm looking for the data. I'm looking for the evidence if you're interested. So once again, please join me. And to all of you in the chat room, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your support. I am going to check at this point before we click off for the evening. And I want to see if I can actually get my own gosh darn chat room up to see what everybody's saying, if anything. Although you have to be careful here because technologically, I've got some, obviously you can tell I've got some problems. I want to say hi to everybody in the chat room. Thank you again. And we'll give you all a smiley face. Thank you. All right. I don't even know if that worked, but hey. Thank you all, folks, very much. I appreciate it. Y'all be good out there, all right? And we've got a lot more really awesome data coming for you. And, of course, some outside camera shots and some outside footage. So we're going to try to crank some stuff out as soon as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, vigilance for victory. Follow the data. Follow the logic. As we try to shut down our gosh darn stream. This is not space-based technology. We have to kick the hamster wheel a couple times and put some cheese in front of it to close the stream down. Thank you.